hearing for our annual service delivery and budget plan. And I will go ahead and first present the service delivery plan, and then I'll have Catalina present the budget plan, and then we'll open it for public comment. And so this year we're doing this process a little differently. And so CDE is really focusing on that this is a plan for the coming year. We used to do it once we were already in the year, and actually would submit it in March to CDE. And so this year they're kind of looking at it differently as our application for our IDEA fund. So that's why we have a change in the timing of this. Basically, this is a plan of taking information on what current services we have and using that to plan forward, and then taking information regarding those services and how the districts have budgeted to support those services. So the first section of the service plan is 11 pages, and it goes through the service descriptors that CDE has developed to describe services here in California. And each SELPA has the option of adopting those service descriptors, modifying them, or adding service descriptors. So the 200 series is services for students in the Early Start program, which is for ages 0 up to their third birthday. And the SELPA has adopted all of those descriptors and indicates that there currently are some that are not being utilized. However, they would be available if a student's IFSP had those on them. The 300s are direct instruction, specialized academic instruction, as well as individual and small group instruction. Those are adopted and in use. The 400 series is essentially what we think of as related services. So things like speech, adaptive PE, and all of those have been adopted, and they are all currently utilized. The 500 series is our mental health services, and so while these services remain the same in the descriptors, you'll see when we get to our budget that because of the shift in responsibility, the districts now have budgeted money, the mental health money that we have received to provide these services. The only service we don't have in our area, in the area of mental health, is day treatment services, and so currently are not utilized. There are a couple of non-public schools who do provide day treatment if those are necessary. The 600 series are services for students with low incidence disabilities, as well as the 700s, and some of the 700 series also could be provided to other students, and all of those are adopted, and there are a couple reading services, orthopedic services, and note-taking, which are not currently utilized. Then the 800s are our services for transition for our students that are age 16 and above. And then we have 900, which is other related services, and those are the IEP team usually will specify specifically what that is. So we don't have any applications descriptors that have been adopted, and so that is the complete array of services that would be provided in our SELPA. So Catalina will go ahead and have you go over how the districts have budgeted for these services. You know, as I mentioned, you know, mental health now is something new that we've incorporated.
Okay, good morning. I think many of you have already heard some of this information because we went ahead and presented this at CAC, but we're going to go ahead and do this as the public requirement that we have to go ahead and do this for the public again. So basically what you have, the first page on your handout there, that's the summary of all of the revenue and expenditures that we currently have in our annual budget plan for next year. So this is for 12-13. As Joan mentioned earlier, this is a new timelines for us, so the information that we are using to compile the expenditures is based on the SEMB report, which is a report that all of the districts submit to WESELPA in September, October of this last year they have submitted those. So this front page is a summary. As you can see, we receive some local property taxes. We receive the state local entitlement, 8602. We get some federal local assistance. We get a preschool local entitlement. We get some additional federal preschool money, infant dollars we receive, some staff development, and some other smaller grants that we have within WESELPA, as well as you can see the mental health revenue that is identified based on the projections that we have for 1213. And then the SDC revenue limit. That's the revenue limit. Those are the dollars that the district is receiving on behalf of special ed students with that are in SDC. So the total revenue is $175,463,000. And then if you go ahead and take a look at the summary of expenditures, this is based on our goals, which is the 5,001. Those are administrative costs. And those are anything that's not pretty much a direct service to students, and that's so that's our administrative costs in 5,001. Our regionalized services are in 50/50. Then we have some regionalized program specialist services. Then we have our infant expenditures, our preschool services, and then we have our severe and low incidence services in the 5750s. And then we have in the 5770s, we have our non-severe services for students ages 5 through 22. And then again, for expenditures, we went ahead and we identified the expenditures the same as the revenue received that we anticipate the districts will be spending next year. So if you take a look, in the very last item there, it says that with an asterisk, so all of the expenditures may include aids and services in regular classes and environments. This is something that the state has asked us to go ahead and separate and identify those expenses. So that $5,660,000 is included in the $175,463. If you go ahead and you turn to the next page is a summary of where the information and how we broke it out by district. So if you take a look at the budgeted expenditures on the top section there, that's basically the budgets that the districts have provided to the SELPA in September, October of this last year, and we're going to use those same budgets for 12-13 as we do not have that information available to us at this time. The only thing that was added there is the third to the last column on the right where it says estimate equals a projected federal and state mental health funding. So the mental health funding based on our distribution for each of our districts is identified there. So that's the summary of the expenditures. And then in the next section we have our 12-13 revenue. And this is based on the latest funding model and the latest information that we have. So this is a good projection of what our revenue is going to be looking like next year. So we have, you see the dollar amount for our property taxes, the amount for federal local assistance. That's based on actual unduplicated count for our special ed students by district. And then there is the state AB 602 entitlement, which comes directly out of our projected AB 602 funding model. Then we have our, the next one's the preschool local entitlement, federal grant, the infant program, the personnel development, and other grants. Those are all based on the current year funding that we received this year, because we do not have the new funding for next year yet. So this is our best projection at this point. You can see the federal and the state mental health revenue. It's coming in. We have two sources for that. So there's $728,000 for federal, and then there's $6,754,000 for state. And then the second to last column there, that's our revenue limit that we are estimating based on the information that's posted on the San Bernardino County Schools website for each of our districts. So we go ahead and we get the information from what schools, not school services, but internal business advisory in San Bernardino County Schools, what their projection is, and that was as of is noted here. It's noted as of their it's their January projections. So basically, that's the information. And again, what Joan had mentioned, all of the services that are being provided, these are the funds to go ahead and provide for those services that we have in WESELPA. Okay. Any questions?
Okay.
Yes, this is the first time I see the 2012-2013 projected revenue limit, and that's something we did not discuss at the CAC meeting back on May 15th. Can you go through the each column? Because I'm not understanding what each column means.
Okay, this is the last page there. This is the revenue limit. Again, this is information that is posted on the Business Advisory website, and that's what we normally would use for this purpose. So the revenue limit would be the dollar amount associated for each school district. The revenue limit dollars for each school district is different.
What does that mean, revenue limit?
Pardon me?
What does that mean?
Revenue limit, that is the basically the dollars that are allocated to a school district for the students. So it's just called revenue limit, but for each student, say for Altaloma, they get $6,400.99 for each student. That's the money that they get from the state to educate our students. So then the next column is the revenue limit deficit. So we're in deficit. The state is not fully passing on the revenue limit dollars that should be going to our districts. So there's a 0.77780 deficit factor that is applied. So if you take the $6,400, look at it, Altaloma, take the $6,400, multiplied it by that deficit, their actual revenue limit would be, and there's also a $370 decrease that is also applied based on the January budget from the governor. So the 4,608 is their adjusted revenue limit. So that's basically what they get for each student. And then you have, and based on ADA. And then in the next column, this is the special ed annual ADA that was, I went ahead and got the ADA information off of the various reports that are submitted to the state. So this is basically our P2 ADA for this year. So these are our latest projections on ADA for our districts, and that's just the special ed, not the total ADA. And then so their projected revenue limit, as you can see for Altaloma, you would take the 4,608 multiplied by the 120.28, and you would get the 554,333. And then if you go
over,
dollars?
So $554.
$4,000, $554,333.24. You see that there? Okay. And then you go over to the next section, and this is where what happens is the county serves students within the districts. So when county is serving a student, they receive the revenue limit that the district, there's a little different revenue limit for county, but it's based on the district revenue limit. So these are the adjustments that are made. Again, these are the adjusted revenue SDC limit dollars, the projected ADA for, this is for county, and then so their adjusted revenue limit for community schools, that's a little bit different than their regular SDC revenue limit, and then you multiply that by also the community schools. So if you go ahead and multiply those across, for Altaloma, county would be receiving approximately $204,601 for revenue limit to offset the costs for the services that they're providing for those Altaloma students. So this is, that's basically the revenue limit calculation, and that again is an estimate. There's going to be some changes with the May revise that's come out. There's going to be some changes. We don't know exactly what's going to happen based on the tax initiatives that are going to be on the ballot, or may not be on the ballot. We don't know. At this point, this is the most recent information we knew as of January. This does not include any of the May revise information. It was a little bit too recent to have incorporated this at the time we went ahead and generated this. So there could be some changes. Again, this is all a plan. It's our projected 12-13 expenditures and revenue for next year. And again, this is a time for comments, any comments that you might have as to services you think you may, other services you are looking at, or concerns with the revenue and expenditures. It's not really a question and answer time for the specifics of what is exactly this mean, but this is more a public comment time for our planning for the future. Comments?
I have a question. Why are you writing in deficits?
Because
The special ed didn't have any cuts that I know of. I know
No, it's
general
not.
education did.
right, what we're doing here, but this is
So
doing,
why
this is our revenue limit. Revenue limit is not special ed revenue limit. It's, well, there's a special ed SDC revenue limit dollars. And it's deficit. All revenue limit is deficited at the state at the 77%. That is coming from the state. There is a deficit right now. We are not, revenue limit is not fully funded. It hasn't been fully funded for probably 2 or 3 years.
So you're saying that there's a bill that says that special ed is to have a deficit and a cut?
The revenue limit is deficited, yes.
And how did it get?
The state, based on the state has identified that there's a revenue limit. The governor's
An assembly
budget.
bill, a senate bill costs,
The governor's budget. The governor's budget reflects a deficit for our revenue
in
limit.
special ed.
Our revenue limit.
All students, it's not just limited to special education. This is the money a district gets to educate all students.
I guess how's that related to the
Special ed, I don't know of any bill that says that special ed is being also cut in any way. General education, yes, I understand that,
These
I
are
got
general
that.
education. This is the same dollars a district gets to educate every student. So that's where the cut is. It's across the board
It's
for
across the
every
board.
student.
Any other comments?
Yes, going back to the mental health, I'm sorry, Dave,
That's
go.
okay.
You go ahead.
Well, mine's on the budget. So, yeah, mine's on this.
Okay.
Code 340, intensive individual instruction. This doesn't look like a description to me. Like, how would you describe the service of intentional individual instruction? See, like 350, that sounds like a description. And 330 is a description, but 340 just sounds like, it doesn't sound like a description to me. Like, what's the actual service? How would you describe the service that's being delivered?
This is a description from CDE. WESELPA does not make this up. Typically, when you're thinking about additional support, that typically is a paraprofessional.
Well, just qualitatively, it just looks different than 330 and 350 as far as not being a description. Because it talks about IEP team determination and additional support. Like, so what is additional support? How would you describe additional support?
As I said, typically that's a paraprofessional
Okay.
supporting the student in addition to the classroom teacher.
Like, in what way? How would you describe their service? What's the service that they deliver?
That would be determined by the student's IEP.
Also, it could be like wide open. It could be any kind of service.
It would be delineated on the IEP. it's instruction as a service. I mean, it can't be any service. It's not recreation, it's instruction.
In the past, we kind of referred to those as a one-to-one aid, where there was an aide that was, there was a paraprofessional that was basically shadowing that student throughout their school day or a portion of their day. So it's that additional instructional services that are required for that student while they're in school. Just kind of, I used to call it.
I have another question. On 330, it says that specialized academic instruction is adapting the content, the methodology, and the delivery of instruction. And I know on an IEP, the delivery is addressed as far as, is it one-to-one, is it a group, is it a general ed classroom? But where is the content and methodology delineated on an IEP if they get specialized academic instruction?
The content would apply to the goal areas. Methodology, the courts have determined, does not have to be delineated on an IEP unless a child requires a specific methodology. This is essentially the definition of special education that you would find in the federal or state law.
So, because it's saying that you can adapt the content, and it's saying you can adapt the methodology, and it's saying you can adapt the delivery to ensure success or access of the child. So there's no way of noting in the IEP when you see the need to adapt the methodology? Like how is that noted? How is that known or made known by the IEP team that a certain methodology is useful or beneficial to a child?
The courts have generally held that the methodology is not part of the IEP.
It says right here.
It's a decision left to the teacher. This isn't saying it's a part of the IEP. This is saying this is the service the student is getting.
Yeah, the service is the adaptation of methodology.
Right, but when you look at the court's decisions regarding methodology and whether it's required to be noted on the IEP or the comments to the Federal Register, it's not part of an IEP. It's
Well, I guess what I'm asking, Joan, is that if I want to, if by this case it says in specialized academic instruction, if that's what's determined a child receives, and the IEP team wants to note the adaptation of a methodology, where in the IEP would they note that? Because they have that option. I'm not talking about the courts, I'm talking about the IEP team noting a service that a child is getting or is to get.
And that's only done in cases where the IEP team feels that a specific methodology is necessary.
And where is that noted if the IEP team determines that? That's my question.
They would probably note it in the comments.
My question was mental health. I see that in the service category 540, day treatment services and this for mental health. Right now it says it's not currently utilized.
Correct.
But aren't we funding mental health, and didn't we get a building, and didn't we have 7 kids in a residential treatment?
Right. We do. Day treatment would not be a residential program. Day treatment is a day program where the student resides at home and have part of their day, their whole day or part day treatment in terms of specific mental health services that they're provided, and we don't have any students who currently are receiving that.
And just to clarify, we do
So-
not have a separate building. That,
Yeah.
that never.
Did that never happen?
No, it never was approved.
So where's the counselors at right now?
They're in a variety of portables on district sites.
Oh, okay, so that wasn't, okay.
It wasn't approved.
Okay, so
It
the,
may still move forward, but right now we're
We're still where we
still doing further research.
so there are portables in different schools? And so the mental health, I know there was questions whether this mental health funding that we see here, it was part of that mental health budget meeting that we had several months ago and was tabled a couple of times. So that mental health money is budgeted in, because remember at the CAC meeting, it was mentioned, but then it wasn't part of this budget?
No, the mental health money is budgeted, and we're definitely receiving revenue. We're receiving it this year as well as next year, and that has all been budgeted, and the budgeting is reflected here. You can see where the allocation is for the states. So the districts are only getting state mental health money, and so the distribution is noted there on the second page of the budget.
Let me ask, is there any public comment that, rather than questions, comment? You know, because
Comment
we're
and
coming
question.
close to the end of our time, and I'd like to allow anybody who has come here to make a public comment and provide their input.
Yeah, I guess mine would kind of fall into that, because I'm a little bit confused because the way that my school district does the budgeting and stuff. Why I'm confused is you have an encroachment amount down here. So basically, this is your revenue coming in,
Correct.
okay?
Correct.
And you don't have enough for all the services.
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
So where's the page that says what you're gonna have to do to make this work? What are the cuts? Where are the cuts gonna be? I'm not sure where that's at.
Those are, what happens, Mo, is all of the districts present their budgets to their boards and to their.
No, I'm just talking about
These are
surplus.
not cuts that are made. What
This is
happens,
what's-
I mean, because the services are on an IEP, we're required to provide those services. So
Mhm.
the money that you see listed as encroachment has to come from the general fund.
From the school districts then?
Yes.
Okay, that's what I'm basically asking, if you guys could really spell it out better next time. Because me, looking at this, it's like, okay, you have an encroachment, how are you gonna make up the difference? You know? And that's what I was wondering. It's like, are you guys gonna make cuts here? I mean, you
No,
know, that was.
any difference, you know, a district has to take the money, you know, out of the general fund to be able to provide those special education services.
Okay, so how would that work though? That's kind of where I'm getting at, like, you're gonna start billing the school districts when you run out of money? I
We
mean.
don't bill the school districts, this is their money.
This is
We
their
pass the
budget.
money through to
Okay,
the school district. Now, your district decides, you know, when it builds its individual budget, you know, they know what their special education expenses are, and so they know what money they'll be getting, you know, through their state and federal funding that the SELPA passes through. Any difference is made up out of what we call general fund money, money that's not, you know, limited or restricted to be paid for a particular program.
okay, so how much of this money does the SELPA hold then? That's where I'm getting confused, because you guys pay for some of the non-public schools, non-public service, you know, so I'm
3%.
I'm just really confused, because when I read this, to be truthful, it's very hard for me to make out what you guys are saying. It really is. And per the ed code, we're supposed to be able to understand it, and I can honestly say, I can't understand the way that you guys do this. And I mentioned that last year and the last year before that, you know, it's really not friendly to the public on how to read this, how to know where the funds are going to. And kind of like when we ask questions, you guys can't even really answer them too good. So I'm kind of concerned, because this is a lot of money.
And
now
actually,
that
that was
I'm
my
the school
public
board-
comment,
Yeah.
is that it's hard to make comment when you don't understand this. And so
It's not
ask
friendly.
questions to understand so you can make comment. Like, one thing I don't understand is, where's the legal services in here? I don't see anywhere in here
And-
where legal services falls under your
Private
expenditures. But I know that WESELPA pays for legal services.
Right, and what you can,
Well, it's the district that pays for the legal services.
No.
Well, through the XPOT, which is held by the WESELPA, and it's paid by the WESELPA.
But it's district money. I mean, I think you need to get down to
It's
that
all
No,
in
it's
bottom line.
semantics.
Okay, see,
It's
we
funny,
understand-
semantics.
It's
We
the
understand
district's
that it's-
money that pays.
Okay, we understand
But
that
the
it's
XPOT is
ten-
shared money,
Yes. Yes.
Right.
So it's not just my district's money, it's all the district's money, and it gets used by paying legal services. And what I'm saying is I don't see anywhere on here expenditure, there's anywhere legal services falls. How would I know where that
How much do you
falls?
guys hold? That's what we're not
That's
seeing.
in a different, that would be when you look at our funding model.
Okay,
You
so
would
when
find
you're
that
going over.
It goes back to my
the
public
annual
comment, is we don't
budget,
understand this, so it's hard to
maybe
make
you
comments.
need to attach
And that
some of
may
that
be-
stuff, use better graphs, because like, I'm trying to figure out, you have an annual budget plan here, okay? Where does the private school fit in here? I don't see anywhere where the private.
Where the private school, I can identify where the
Okay.
private school is. The SELPA receives the allocations for the private school. So if you look under where it says state entitlement, AB 602,
602.
it's part of that 2,021,192 that the SELPA receives.
That's a self receipt,
Correct.
okay?
And it's identified
Now-
right here that it's there.
But me as the public and as a board member, I want to know how much of that money, the 2 million some odd money, goes to private school, because so much has to be allowed to the private school and then carry over. I never see that amount, and that should be
Right, well,
separate.
Mo, to explain that, our AB 602 funding model does do that. We provide those, we update that probably 3 or 4 times a year. The allocation for the private school is on there. This is a compilation of all of our districts and the SELPA budgets. It's not detailed budgets for any one district. The individual districts and the SELPA have our own budgets that we have approved, and we're in the process of all getting approved right now. And those are all just summarized here. All that the
The
state.
requirement from this actually comes from CDE, so we are told specifically how we report this. This is on a very global level. You would really have to look at your individual district budgets and the allocation plan for that, for the other type of detail you're thinking about.
Okay.
So, I mean, so probably if you made a comment or, directed that comment, it would probably be best to direct it to CDE, because they're the ones that set out the process and what this information is.
Okay.
We don't
My comment
choose how we
is next
do it.
time, I'd like to see how much the SELPA is allowed to hold on to that does not filter into the school district for administration costs, legal costs, private schools, training and development. That's what I'd like to see, and then a second one that shows the money that does funnel into the school district. You're kind of merging it all together, so it's very confusing.
Right, well, and one thing, if you take a look, excuse me, where it says the revenue allocation, down here, you'll show what monies the SELPA is actually receiving. It comes to the SELPA and it is used, basically, the SELPA uses it on behalf of our districts. The X-pot, what happens with the X-pot? The X-pot is, it comes through the SELPA, the districts have the expense. So the expense, and that's where it might be a little bit confusing, is the districts on paper basically have the expense because they're paying for all of the X-pot, they're paying for the non-public schools. What we're doing is we're paying the bills in advance for them, and the districts are reimbursing us.
Right.
So that is out a little bit outside of this picture. So the expense for non-public schools would be in OMSD's expenses here. So OMSD has the expense that they're identifying up in the top for the expenses that they're paying. That's an
SELPA
expense.
holds so much of that money. You hold it, you don't filter into the school, and that's where I'm looking at. Where is that money? Because if there's any left over, then it's divided and
And
it's
it goes
sent.
back to the districts.
And that's what I'm looking for, and when I see this, I can't find that.
Right, because that's not identified here. This
You
is
look in the
our-
allocation plan for
Right,
that
you'd have to look
information.
in a different source for that. And I'm more than happy, if you have questions on some of those specific types of things, you can contact me whenever you'd like, and I can go ahead and I can explain, and maybe walk you through that again, and maybe it'll be more helpful to you.
But as a taxpayer, I thought this was a public meeting. I thought, you know, this
It's a
is where you
public
ask the
hearing where
questions. This is where you,
The purpose of a public hearing is to solicit public input. You know, we're able to answer, you know, some simple questions, but, you know, it's not a question and answer. It's not a presentation or a learning tool to explain special education funding.
you just said this was general education.
You're
Or
supposed to
general
be able,
education.
we're supposed to be able to leave with the understanding of the annual budget. And I don't, and that's what I'm saying right now, you know, I'm objecting to the way that this was done. I would like you guys to do another public notice and repost and maybe use some of the financial people at the school districts to do this a little bit friendlier. You know, use better graphing and stuff like that so it makes better sense.
Christy, did you have a comment?
Yes, my comment is under the expenditures on the first page, the Administrative Support Special Education Program. My comment going forward would be that I think that the amount of that should be reduced. That's my comment.
We're going to close the public hearing so we can begin our superintendent's council meeting.